landlords are no longer dominating the UK property market. Is it the end of the road for landlords? Is this just a change of paradigm? Are we looking at something different occurring in the UK? Basically, we have rising yields, resilient demand and falling prices, setting the stage for a new kind of opportunity for people to go out there and buy. So in the UK today, 61.7% of households are owned by homeowners, 19.5% are private renters, 17.5% are social landlords, i.e. councils, that sort of stuff. That's a reflection of the whole of the UK. But these figures don't include hotels, guest houses, temporary accommodation that the government is using to house the refugees and also people who can no longer get into social housing because there's so little of it. That adds nearly 11% to the social housing figures, which takes us all the way back to pre-Thatcherite figures before the right to buy, and reduces the amount of owner-occupiers to close to 50%. So although it would appear landlords are turning away from the PRS, the private rental sector, opportunities in other sorts of houses are coming along, such as build to rent, social housing, HMOs and the service sector. When you look at it, if it's costing £14 to put a person up by the government in a HMO per night compared to £134 in a hotel guest house, it makes sense for the government to promote the private rental concept sector.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying this piece of content and would like to find out more about buying property and our key 10 steps to doing so, then pop your details in the link below somewhere and grab a copy of our book, 10 Steps to 10K, the Expat Property Playbook. Enjoy.
So let's just look at the market and see what's going on. The key points are that house prices fell in April, okay, but it's not the start of a crash. Just 2 years ago, we were looking at a real crash because we had cost of living crisis, inflation, actually looking at what was a static market where things were falling. So this is not a correction. House prices dropped by 0.6% month on month in April, the sharpest fall since that 2 years ago point. Nationwide says this. It coincides with the end of stamp duty relief. Okay, so it caused many house buyers to rush deals through the market, and now that glut has been taken up as people force their way through, it's sort of sagged a bit, if you can understand what I mean. Savills don't expect this to be, they expect this dip to be short-lived, and it's predicting modest growth in H2 2025 as rates ease, and they are easing, interest rates are falling, and confidence improves, and it will do so. First-time buyers, obviously that's a blow for them. Stamp duty threshold has dropped from 425,000 to 300,000, making it more expensive for them to get in. But overall in the general market, it's likely to be a rebound by summer. Okay, as I said, mortgage rates are easing, sub 4% deals are returning to lower LTV, loan to value brackets. Rates fell by 25 basis points last week, and Oxford Economics, Bloomberg expect a further 1% cut by the end of 2026. That's quite amazing. That's over a quarter off the rate that people are paying at present. Savills believe buyer interest is rebounding, especially amongst upsizers and family movers in affordable regions. And the real kicker is that wage growth is outpacing inflation. Unemployment remains low, supporting consumer confidence and housing demand. And there's an interesting thing here. You talk about how expensive things are. I was talking to my wife and she was talking about paying £20 for a children's meal in a restaurant in the UK. And £20, but you forget when you've been away from the UK for 15 years, £20 was only £5 15 years ago. So things haven't really gone up that much. It's just that inflation has devalued the currency. Okay, so anyway, long-term growth is changing from capital gains to stability. Since 1970, nominal house price growth has been at 7.1% annually. But real inflation adjusted growth has flattened since 2010. Therefore, at the moment, we're not looking at house prices actually going up and people buying to make money from that perspective. They're buying to safeguard their money, but also to put it into a location where someone else is going to pay the debt off. And so you're looking at, instead of capital gain, we're looking at more yield. And it's more of a yield play. It used to be very easy to buy a house and flip it and make some good profit on it. Those times in the 80s and 90s have gone. There may be a few left in the UK, but I find it very hard to find them. So it's a case of find a solid wealth haven and buy that. And that's what we're trying to do here. So Savills expect 1 to 2% average growth per year over the next 5 years. Steady, not spectacular. And you might say, oh, that's terrible, really. But bear in mind, the poorest performing region is the southeast, and it will still give us 17% cumulative growth over the next 5 years. If you look up to the Midlands and parts of the north, that's 25 to 28%. So you're still getting some capital growth, but the point is to look for real yield buys where's going to give me a good yield and return on my investment. One of the quotes from Financial Times is homeowners, the older generations, are holding the keys to the answer. 60-plus-year-olds own 2.95 trillion in property wealth. Those under 35 owe 600 billion. Okay, so that's what? 5 times as much. And half of the 600 billion is debt. Most of the people over 60 have paid their mortgages off. So Savills' insight into that is the bank of mum and dad is playing a larger role than ever in helping younger generations buy, especially in the southeast. The generational divide is slowing turnover and weakening mobility across the housing ladder. And it's also reflected in the fact that people 60 plus don't want to downsize into a 2-bedroom flat. They want to stay in their family home. My own children say, I can't sell the home because they have all their memories there. So it's very difficult to let something go when you've got 25 years worth of memories in it. So I can understand that. But the point is, it is a cork in the flow, and it needs to be overcome if at all possible. Lending reforms could be a potential analgesic for that. Basically loosening loan-to-income caps, easing of mortgage stress tests, which the government has been bringing in this last month. That could boost borrowing by 10 to 20%, particularly for younger buyers. And I think that's the thing we should be looking at, is younger buyers getting easier onto the market. Because if you took out a 25-year mortgage when you're 25, then you've got a lifetime ahead of you, and it's easy to pay that off. If you're doing that when you're 40, that's going to be a lot more difficult. So it's a case of giving the money to the right people. Okay, while this could trigger a short-term activity spike, Savills say, on this change of lending, it won't solve affordability, especially in high places, and it won't. High-priced places are too expensive. London is going to really be struggling with this going forward. So what are landlords doing? What is it? Is it a change of paradigm? Is it the end for landlords? For yield, no. For growth, potentially in the short term, yes. Despite harsh regulations, average gross yields rose by 6.99% in March. That's all these new regulations coming in. So we've got consolidation of portfolios from landlords. Others, cash buyers, are getting back into the market because it's a safe haven for your money, as long as you're buying a good location, like a pie location as we call it. Population growth, infrastructure growth and employment growth. Savills' observation on this says regions like the Midlands and the North are seeing increasing landlord activity due to strong yields and lower prices. And that's the whole point. If you can buy something for £220,000 in the Midlands and get yourself 6-7% on it, it's much better than paying £1 million and getting 4% in London. Okay, so demand remains strong. Rents rose by 96% in 96% of all local markets year on year, according to Savills Rental Index. The focus in many cases has turned to a new market as 2 to 4 bed yields on buy-to-let houses fall. A change to a HMO, supported living possibility, focusing on yield, is what many landlords are looking at. So think about it. Where are you going to get the best yield for your money? Not necessarily where the price is going to go up most. Tie the two together, a regeneration area and a good rental yield, and you're laughing. So in summary, the market is evolving. Landlords aren't a dominant force they were before, but this is only a transitionary situation. While the government hopefully sorts out its supported living and its social housing situation, a big part of that is going to be build to rent. A big part of that is going to be supported living, but also there's a huge niche for private landlords. Mortgage rates are easing, lending reforms on the horizon, so there's potential for growth in coming months. Long-term outlook suggests steady growth rather than explosive capital gains. And we won't have that. We should not kid ourselves. We're going to have explosive capital gains. Go and buy in Myanmar if you think you're going to double your money. So that's the only place you might get it, or you might lose everything. Just capitalise on the current market dynamics. So that's the end of the talk for today. Some comments. Brilliant channel from Aimer90916. Thank you very much, Aimer. I'm sure you're a lovely person too. Went on to quote DAH8585. They don't want first-time buyers to buy homes. They want to move new people into council homes, and especially for single mothers, because you have to realise how many single mothers there are out there. It's in the millions. No, I don't think I agree with that. I think you need to have both. If you're going to build a market that's stable and responsible, you need to have homes for young starter families, and you do need to have homes for people who can't afford to get housing because they're on their own, or people who come from disruptive backgrounds. Yes, there are lots of people out there, but you need to have both. I'm sorry, DAH8585, I don't quite agree there, but everyone's due their own opinion. Then Tazbo says, guys, don't get sucked into this nonsense. If you can't afford a house, don't get a silly mortgage. You don't own it if the bank does, and the government doesn't care about you at all. Please try and get something smaller, even if it's not in the area you want. much easier, stress-free life. Yeah, I'd agree with that. My father was a great property person, and he always said, always be over your head. And many times I've done that and it's worked, and sometimes I've done it and I felt pretty bad about it afterwards. So it's worthwhile being realistic about what you can afford. Take small steps to make big gains. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to get onto the property playbook. Many of our clients are and are really enjoying it. Get a copy yourself if you can. Thanks very much. Do take care. Cheerio.